Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Corey Bars. I'm the VP of Operations at FIELDBOSS, Rimrock Corporation product. And today I'm joined by John Marshall Jr. of Action Elevator, owned by HIG, the private equity firm. And also here with me is Michael Atkinson from Liberty Advisor Group. Both of them and myself sit down and have a bit of a conversation about understanding some of the difficulties in selecting a product based on where you want to grow your elevator contractor business, some of the stakeholders involved in that process, what the actual process looks like, what can make it effective, why governance and independent project management is so important, and then ultimately, what are some of the outcomes you can expect from taking on a transformational change like this. So if you're an elevator contractor or really any field service contractor and you're looking to grow your business, or you're stuck on an old software system that's legacy to your industry or non-industry specific, or if you're a private equity company trying to realize some of that value that you've invested into your portfolio and want to understand what a journey from product decision making all the way through the transformational change and what the actual outcomes will look like for one of your businesses, I think this conversation will resonate with you. All right, John, let's start at the beginning. What told you the status quo wasn't sustainable, and where did the pressure to modernize Action Elevator show up first?
Action, like many other ISPs in the market, was a founding managed entity and business. It was founded by a family 14 years ago. We had great success, grew at a pretty remarkable pace. And, at some point about 5 or 6 years ago, we had the opportunity to partner with private equity. They had a first partner and then a second partner, and it was very apparent as we entered that second partner stage, that we were going to, the growth pattern that we were undertaking and the level of sophistication that we were going to be asked to provide, our existing system wasn't going to suffice. So at that point, we undertook a search to identify a group or a product that would meet all of our needs, both operationally, from a sales perspective, from a financial perspective, in pretty much every corner of our business. So through that process, we had the opportunity to meet with Rimrock and the FIELDBOSS folks, and they presented to us what we really believe is really the best solution for our business. In going to allow us to scale the business and to operate the business in a way that we're going to need to take the next steps that we're taking from a growth perspective, and our private equity partners were very supportive in that venture. So throughout that process, we also found that any system change, any organizational change is going to be intense. It's going to require quite a bit of support and bandwidth that, frankly, just internally, we just did not have, at the availability from the inside office support. So that's where Liberty enters the picture, and Michael Atkinson and their support throughout the process was instrumental in organizing the entire process and allowing us to maintain our day jobs and maintain focus on the core business, while also knowing that we had a really great partner to help organize and drive the process for us, both from the Rimrock side and their implementation group, but also from Michael's side and the fact that he was always looking out for our best interest.
It's really well put, John, because, it's a big story. It was a long journey. And, I think having Liberty involved in that really allowed your team to focus on what mattered most, which was finding the right solution for Action, finding the right solutions to problems, as you started digging in further into the software. Michael, you and your team at Liberty get brought in for large PE-backed projects often. What are some of the main reasons these large technology platform changes are pushed forward, and what does your team do to help with that?
Well, really, thank you, Corey. One of the main reasons why companies kind of embark on these big transformational programs is to kind of get rid of old systems that don't really support their business anymore. They're not scalable. They're not kind of built on solutions that will last into the future here. So in this case here, the PE sponsor in Purchasing Action, they're about to embark on the transformation, moving from a prior software platform over to FIELDBOSS. And really what they lacked was that they didn't have the bandwidth internally to fully dedicate resources to manage the program from a day-to-day perspective. So where we come into play is we really like to serve as an independent advisor. Yes, we're brought in by the PE sponsor, but really our best interests lie in making sure that FIELDBOSS is successful in their implementation, making sure Action Elevator is successful and not disruptive to their business during this process, and also making sure that the PE sponsor gets everything out of the transformation that they want to see from their perspective. So really what we do is we come in, we provide that independent program management office to drive the day-to-day execution, the rigor that's required to hold all parties accountable and to achieve the timeline as desired and on budget.
That's great, Michael. Thank you. And John, can you maybe speak to how you felt, being supported by HIG to get someone like Liberty Advisors Group, who does this day in and day out, really helped your team, take on the project from beginning to end?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I mean, we're elevator people, first and foremost. We aren't systems management people or really a kind of a project or a process kind of driven or focused kind of group, from the perspective of implementing a major change like this. We solve elevator problems. We do that very well. So it was very apparent to us that, and to HIGs, that we were going to need that resource to support us. And, from the get-go, Michael's professionalism, Liberty's professionalism throughout the process, and keeping everybody on task and driving through and filling the voids and asking the questions that we may not have been thinking of, from an implementation standpoint, from a training perspective, from a needs perspective. It was really integral to what we were going to need, as we stepped through the process. That really took us about 8 to 9 months to get through from beginning to end.
Oh, that's great. And I agree, a company like Action Elevator runs a great business. They've scaled year over year, and all these things, when your main focus is solving elevator problems for your customers, you kind of do patchwork internal processes throughout, and then you're going to bring in a big technology system. If you're not using that time to kind of reevaluate where you are and how you do things and what you do, you're not really taking advantage of the new software and the new solution as a revisit to your business. And I think from my experience, working with Liberty, they really helped in that, because they were able to help your team really focus on what's the outcome of each reason we're doing something new in the new system versus just, okay, we have to learn a new system and where do I click next, as an example.
We were coming from a legacy system that was roughly 30 to 35 years old, interfaces about the same, looked about the same. And there was going to be a need, being a PE-backed platform, to be able to be responsive and survive, diligence processes in the future, to be able to produce data, that we hadn't contemplated before, but be able to get to it, sort it, and get it out quickly and produce a product quickly. We also are going to have the dynamic with our business, where we're going to be looking at other platforms, looking at adjacent operations in other territories and so forth. And one of the problems we had was just getting a new entity's data set loaded into our old system was onerous. And it was very time consuming. And the process of doing that was just not something that we could really do at scale. So all of those things were leading us in a direction, and those were kind of a private equity kind of focus, but also from an operational focus. It was just time for us to take the next step in terms of managing our resources, and having insight into our business that our old system just wasn't able to do, just from the standpoint that we couldn't withdraw the information in a way that was helpful for us. So, when we take all of that into perspective and say, hey, listen, these are the demands that we're going to be under from both an acquisition standpoint and then a future exit standpoint from a private equity standpoint. And then also the perspective of, hey, listen, you go from 1,000 elevators to 4,000 elevators to 10,000 to 20,000 elevators, whatever that scale is. We just needed to take the next step operationally. They're going to allow us to do that and to continue to provide the best, what I believe is the best customer service in our markets, where we are and in other markets as we grow. So FIELDBOSS, after we evaluated FIELDBOSS, we mentioned the concept before of it being kind of a broad, accessible platform through Microsoft, something that we had no fear that was going to close up its doors, in a year and go away. And the support also after the fact, from the Rimrock group was very appealing to us. The fact that we weren't going to be out on an island by ourselves, somebody wasn't selling us a piece of software and saying good luck. So from a scalability perspective, it was hitting the right notes from us, from being not just industry specific software, but having the flexibility to customize to our industry, and giving us more options to kind of build the software and build a platform around ourselves. You have some other options in the market, from a software perspective, that are pretty uniquely focused at our industry, but they come with a little bit more of a rigid, structure, a little bit more of a rigid support system on the backside where, if they don't have it in the box, it's not really an option. Whereas with a Microsoft product and the FIELDBOSS group, if we can imagine it, theoretically we can get there. We can build out what we need. So that's really when we were discussing all the different options in the market, those are the reasons that kind of brought us back, to the FIELDBOSS group and or the FIELDBOSS product into the Rimrock specifically. And that's kind of how we settled on that decision.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when your business is going to grow at this pace like Action has and doing it quite successfully, it's you don't know what you're going to need in the future. So by giving yourself that flexibility, it's really important. I think you highlighted that well. One thing I wanted to know, you just kind of touched on it there, is the morale component of it as well, right? So you've got this staff, this growing team, this expectation, from PE and yourselves to grow, and people feeling that maybe the platform is a limitation to that for themselves and for their careers, right? So I think that, do you want to speak a little bit about the morale at Action with the idea of a transformation like this?
From the perspective of what I've experienced, what I've seen with my team, granted, all change is hard, right? But when we drive through that process, the buy-in that we got from everybody because they saw where we were going, and the intentionality with which we were doing it with, we weren't just throwing it at them and saying, hey, you got to kind of sink or swim here. We went through extensive training and review processes with the Rimrock group, with Liberty guiding those discussions and keeping us on track throughout the process to try to make sure that, this implementation, as difficult as it is to do a big systems change in any organization, was going to, add as much value to every person's, job inside of our organization as we could possibly get. And I think that folks saw that. They saw the strive from management to improve the business. And it's something that's still going on today, right? You continue to demonstrate that we're not resting on our laurels, that we're willing to invest in the business. The HIG is willing to invest in the business also, and make these improvements, add value, and to make us that much more of a top tier service provider in our industry.
I think that's really well said, John, and I can't agree more. A lot of leadership teams have a vision for where they want to go, and they just see that as steps to complete. Whereas you and your team, I saw you in every training session. You're out there, leading by example, but also helping people understand that it's going to be hard, but we're all here going to do it together, and that really made a huge difference in the project. So, Michael, from like a vendor-agnostic standpoint, what did you see during the implementation that really reinforced that FieldBoss was the right platform for Action and HIG's vision of growth and where they needed to get to as a business?
Yeah, so we do a lot of software selections for our clients, but we mostly deal with the big ERPs like SAP, NetSuite, Infor, and then Dynamics 365. So coming in from, again, like you said, our vendor agnostic view, we're not partnered with any software vendors. What really struck us was that FieldBoss is built on Dynamics 365. We see large organizations across our portfolio of work we've done moving to Dynamics 365. So as John mentioned, like it's out there, it's proven, it's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's also scalable. So this whole project was essentially based upon like the future for Action Elevator. There's future plans to grow Action from where they are today to an organization multiple times larger than what they currently are. And as John mentioned, with their current platform, it's not scalable. But with FieldBoss, especially being built on top of Dynamics 365, we really saw the scalability there. And also too, and I think, John, you could vouch for this as well, but the general UI user experience for the folks at Action Elevator was significantly improved in comparison to what they're operating on previously. So that's just our perspective. Again, we were brought in after the software selection, but it was pretty evident that Action Elevator made the right decision choosing FieldBoss for their journey.
And Michael, I know you spoke, quite a lot about the project during it and Action's team and John and his leadership team's effort in really rolling this out. So, that marriage of FieldBoss, Action Elevator, Liberty Advisors Group, what did you see from the Action Elevator team that really made this a successful project in your mind? Since, I'm guessing you don't see that kind of effort every day.
Well, it's something that you already mentioned, Corey. It's the top-down buy-in. So it started all the way at the top with you, John, and then also Frank. You guys made this a priority. You led from the front. You were there in the meetings, leading by example, doing the things that you asked your people to do, which is step one. If you don't have a leadership team that's bought in on the transformation and co-sponsoring the transformation, you're likely going to fail from a people and change perspective. So that was the big thing for me. And then also just the willingness by all parties. So the willingness by the PE sponsor, HIG, the willingness by every person that I interacted with at Action Elevator really set the tone for a successful transformation journey.
I agree. I think the main takeaway of this is, it's really important to choose the right technology. To do that, you have to understand where you want your business to go, what it is today and where you want it to go. And then you have to actually invest the time and effort into it. And I think between Action, HIG, Liberty, and ourselves, that was the big difference on this project that made it, successful day one, but also successful day 100 as an example. So you mentioned before, John, that the implementation itself, there is no specific timeline, like, it was a 3-month implementation. For your team, that transformation effort, 6, 8 months, a year, to different levels. First, the software selection process, then the actual, planning of how the job is going to go, the implementation itself, which is very time consuming, and then the post-implementation stabilization and all those components. So, Michael, how did you and your team structure the accountability across the private equity, HIG, Action, and FieldBoss for this project specifically?
For sure. As part of the way that we drive accountability for all these PMO type engagements that we do, we really like to partner with all the parties involved. So you have HIG as the PE sponsor, you have Action Elevator as the operating company embarking on the transformation. Then you have you all as the system implementer implementing FieldBoss. So what we really like to do is become two in the box with each of the parties involved. So how we did that with this project really was we had touch points specifically with you and your team, Corey. We had multiple touch points with you and your team, John. And then we had important touch points with the PE sponsor to keep them all informed, escalate any decisions needed to both HIG, talk with you, John, about you and your team, what we needed from you all, decisions we needed to be made, tasks that we needed to be done, to inform then meeting with you all, Corey, to check in on progress, like, hey, where are we at in our project plan? We need to have these over to Action Elevator and HIG by X, Y, and Z date to meet kind of the decision timeline that we have. So it's just really embedding ourselves in with each of the parties involved to make sure that we're all singing the same sheet of music in terms of the project timeline and what we need to accomplish on a week-to-week basis. But also, too, during this, yes, we drive day-to-day rigor. But we're also looking out a couple weeks in advance to see kind of what the next major milestones are upcoming. What are we doing to be ready for those? In addition to just the day-to-day execution of the program.
And why was that governance and structure so helpful for you, John, and your team?
Yeah, we could not have gone through this process without Michael and his group. Really, I looked at him as the linchpin. He was keeping accountability across the entire platform. My interests were operationally based and business based. Obviously, our private equity partner has a perspective, an investment perspective that they're trying to make sure that they're getting out of the platform and going to be able to serve all the needs we have there. And frankly, there's language, Corey, that you guys speak that I just don't speak. That Michael's going to be better at interpreting for us and holding us accountable in our platform from an HIG perspective, and also from a FIELDBOSS and a Rimrock perspective about asks that we had for them. And Michael really helped marry all of those parts together for us. And so I couldn't imagine going through the process without that support. And that organizational ability, the professionalism of the process, and really, and you hit it on. Like, listen, we're a small business, but Michael, made us feel like we were, a Fortune 500 company in terms of how he ran the process, and how helpful he was, to making sure again that every bell got rung as we went through it.
Yeah, I think one of the main things for me was keeping all the different stakeholders accountable and also up to date on what their impact really had to the project, because people, again, they all have day-to-day jobs, both on our side, at FIELDBOSS, and then especially at Action. And we're not, we do it fairly often, but Action definitely isn't a technology change expert. They don't have a bunch of people who understand data migrations and implementations and configurations and what the cause and effect these decisions will be. And one of the things that really set this apart was helping to understand, what's a priority, why is it a priority, and who's responsible for it, and then keeping that information accurate across everybody. So I thought both Michael and Action really, helped us keep to our focuses of like, this is our job, we'll do our part, and let Michael's team do all the dirty work in between and bear the bad news on occasion with the positive goal at the end, which is really important. Clearly, Michael and his team, FIELDBOSS, our implementation process and Action, spent a lot of time, prepping for this day. There's this go live day out in the future that we're talking about for months, and then it becomes weeks, and then it becomes a few days. What was that transition really like to shut off the lights of the old way versus the new way at Action Elevator? What was that week and then subsequent few days like for your team?
As we kind of touched on before, the amount of preparation that Michael did and the Rimrock group did leading us into that transition date was so important. It really removed the number of surprises, from that transition period that, put us in the best footing possible. But, the day of and the week leading up to and the week after, some key things, that were really, really very helpful. Michael was on site with our team day one, as were the Rimrock group. They had on-site staff day one to work through all of our, any hiccups that come with the first time you press go on any system. They stayed on site for a period of a week. And then as we followed up beyond that, there were, recurring regular daily check-ins, in the weeks post go live, which as time went on and as confidence was gained in the system, we were able to step back and pare those down, to the point where, even, today we still have recurring calls, with the Rimrock group, to go over any lingering issues or any customization requests or things of that nature. So how our staff experienced that, is that no one felt like they were alone, and trying to figure the system out. They were, supported, by the Rimrock group in person, throughout those first few weeks. And that was so critical. I can't imagine doing it without, staff being on site to troubleshoot and help, just stabilize, the systems and the structure in that first couple of weeks. So while, again, it is disruptive to take something that you've been doing in some of our cases for a couple of decades, or in some other people's a triple or 3 decades. But the reality is that I can't imagine it having gone any better than the way it did with the collaboration that we had with the Liberty Group, and with Rimrock. And again, and HIG's perspective on it, and their ability and willingness to support the process and invest in the platform. Again, I can't imagine it going any better.
Yeah, I think what you highlighted there with the collaboration is really a main part of it. And then that governance help mitigate the risks. So, we always say on day one, we need to be able to create tickets. Mechanics need to be able to fill them out, and invoices need to go out the door. The rest we can work through. And I think, Michael and his team bringing that structure in, and then us being able to be so prepared for that project just really mitigated the amount and type of risk that happens. So that builds confidence in everybody. And then they're just little issues around the corners and softening the edges to really help the team understand the platform and how they'll leverage it. Because you can only prepare so much until you actually get in there. So that's well said.
And one thing I can add to all this is that throughout the entire process, the FIELDBOSS team was extremely flexible. They just didn't come in and say, no, this is how we do it from start to finish. We're not going to change or flex our ways for any reason whatsoever. Because when I came in, I asked the FIELDBOSS team to do things that they haven't really been asked to do previously. And rather than saying no, they said yes, and how else can we help? So that flexibility, especially when it came to go live, the rigor we had during the hypercare process, with the FIELDBOSS team, I just can't say it enough. You guys were very flexible and adapted to the requests of not only myself leading up the PMO, but also the requests of HIG as the PE sponsor and the requests of Action Elevator throughout the entire implementation. So big kudos to your team because, like you said, yeah, even though you're a small team, I like to call them SWAT teams. They're small, flexible teams that come in, and they adapt and become one with the client that they're delivering for. And so it's not cookie cutter, even though the project plan, the steps and the phases might be generally cookie cutter, depending on the scope being implemented. But the way that it's implemented was very bespoke, and we really appreciated that from the FIELDBOSS team.
The appreciation that we had for, the time that Rimrock took to understand the unique qualities of our business, and the nuances there. And there's a ton of elevator companies out there, there's a ton of elevator platforms out there. But understanding that not everyone's the same, not everyone does the process the same way, not everyone checks this box or, pushes data the same way. And the careful consideration to ask questions about, hey, this is how we see it done elsewhere. How are you doing it? These are the nuances. We weren't just, like you've said, just a cookie cutter application where I was like, well, that's the way it is. There was some time spent to understand our business, which has really made the entire process a lot easier.
And why is that so important to you, John? Like I can imagine, as someone who runs a business like this that's changed often, like why is it so important that that we're willing to be flexible and that we want to meet you in the middle on these things? What does it do for you?
In the context specifically of how our folks experienced it, right? But again, understanding that, there's a base level of anxiety for most of these folks around, their jobs and their livelihoods, and the way that they've been doing things and how they're used to doing things, and taking the moment to recognize, that, hey, listen, there's some specific way that they do their job, or some specific way that we handle our business. It helps to soothe some folks in terms of, hey, listen, we've got a partner here who is understanding us, who is seeing our business for what it is, and is really tailoring something to what we need.
And I really appreciate the SWOT analogy, Michael, but I can imagine our mostly Canadian team's marksman scores would not elicit that type of performance, never mind the cardio and other things required. So I appreciate it. So I guess, I want to think about it more from like an investment standpoint as well. I think often gets overlooked. It's one thing to have an old technology provider and say, hey, we need to make a change. We can't customize it anymore. We can't adjust it. But imagine it from, Action's perspective and HIG's perspective. What does a project like this do to really like de-risk the investment, in the business and the continued investment, right, John, of like purchasing up other companies or partnering with other organizations as you guys expand? So what does a project like this really do to de-risk that for Action and ultimately HIG?
Private equity's interest with every investment they have is about value creation. Value creation for the business means value creation for their investments and their partners that are invested inside the business. And without a platform like FIELDBOSS, the notion of efficiently acquiring and then going through diligence processes on the next turn, it just was very onerous, and FIELDBOSS was the platform that is allowing us to be able to meet all of those demands.
So something that I personally think gets, understated in a lot of these projects is that ultimately, these are elevator contractor companies like yourself that are heavily influenced by their mechanics, whether that's because they don't have enough or they have too many, or they have certain skill sets and they're not really usually eager to adopt new technologies. So what's really been the difference from your mind from the technician perspective for this system? And then obviously what that affects from an office side as well.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time talking about the administrative or the management changes that we underwent to make this transition, but it's also an impact from a field perspective, and the buy-in and the response from the field staff has been what I think is one of the most positive outcomes out of this. There's certain attributes of the interface that they have with the system, with mobile technology, that's allowing them to gain access and insight to more information about their routes, more information about their customer base, because they're just as concerned about delivery as we are. They want to know that when they make a recommendation to the office, that it's being followed up on and that somebody's taking it seriously. They want to know that if they've got a parts request or something of that nature, that it's actually being seen and actioned on by the, no pun intended, by the office. So those attributes of the system have been immensely positive. The opportunity for them also to see scheduling aspects that simply weren't available to them in our previous platform. It gives them assurance, that there's an organizational method to what we're doing. That there's somebody who is looking out for them and setting the dominoes up the right way. So the other big change for us, aside from the field aspects of the program and of the system, were also related to the sales opportunities. Again, like most independent elevator companies, companies of all types, not just elevator companies, really did not have formal sales systems or CRM. And that has totally changed with FIELDBOSS in the sense that it is professionalized, that has given visibility to our sales activities, to our sales staff activities that we simply didn't have before. We were tracking things in spreadsheets and Google share sheets and things of this nature, trying to build a readout on exactly what we were doing in our sales department. But now with FIELDBOSS, we actually have full tracking and accountability for our sales staff that we didn't have in the past. And the structure of the system is such that there's really a relational link between all of our sales activities and the operational side of the business in ways that we just didn't have. And to link the field together, for instance, that when the field makes a recommendation, we can actually see what the outcome of that field recommendation in terms of it being related to a sales activity. And that's something that we intuitively understood before, is that, hey, Joe made a recommendation about this, and he really sold it to the customer because he believed that it was the case. That's something that we might say at the Christmas party, thanks, Joe. But now we actually have actionable data on it that that the field is supporting our sales activities in that way. There's other aspects of the system from a maintenance management standpoint that are just so much more detailed and so much more thorough in terms of how they're structured, that it's giving our visibility into the system and visibility into our daily activities from a service delivery standpoint that we just we couldn't have imagined before we made this transition.
And why is that so important to you? Like you're the COO at Action, and you're running this business that has new goals and new expectations all the time. So why is that so important for you and some of the other stakeholders, that there's this connection between the system and that you're able to push new business and keep existing customers happy and empower the mechanics to do their best job, basically?
We started out this business because not from a economics perspective or a finance perspective to try to make money, but we wanted to compete in the marketplace and deliver the best possible customer service that we can. And when that drives you, when you're driven to have operational excellence, to want to outperform your peers in the market, the success and the profits and the money side of it takes care of itself. Because if you take care of your customers, you take care of your operations, and you run a top of class organization, which is what we're striving to do here every single day. It's a sense of fulfillment that we have just from the perspective of, hey, we know that we're delivering on the demands that our customers have for us.
I really appreciate, both of your time going through this and actually kind of reflecting on the project, because it was so encompassing and consuming for all of us for such a period of time to kind of look back on it. It's a little cathartic, and it's nice to highlight some of the things. And I think what I learned most about this and talking to both of you about it is that, it's extremely important upfront to make a decision on where your business wants to be, and then not just talk the talk, but walk the walk, put the effort in, leadership buy-in, get in proper governance and structure for these projects, have a vision of where you want to be, and actually push that through, and using the technology as just a tool to help you get there, not resting that it's going to solve every problem, and building that relationship between these groups to help solve those problems that are going to happen regardless. So Michael, is there anything that you specifically want to say to, any other PE-backed companies looking to do large technological change that, really would resonate with them based on, the services that Liberty provided here for FIELDBOSS and Action Elevator and HIG?
We're brought in by our clients to solve their most difficult business challenges and or to lead up significant transformations that have financial and operational risk associated with it. And so as this little case study highlights is, with our expertise, we help deliver these types of programs on time and on budget, reducing surprises and accelerating value creation for all parties involved.
So, John, do you have any last remarks for any other elevator contractor that's, interested in going through a big project like this, trying to realize their growth or interested in partnering with a PE firm that honestly does things the right way?
If you are an elevator contractor today evaluating systems out there that are available in the marketplace, I can't imagine a better solution than FIELDBOSS for your business. As an independent ISP, and the flexibility and the dynamics that it has to be able to scale your business. And I want you to think about running your business 20 years from now, not 20 days from now. I know we can all be prisoners of the moment, but I think it's very important to look down the horizon and say, hey, where is this business going to be, and what systems am I going to need to support that business in the future? And from a private equity perspective, hands down, the most functional system for ISPs, elevator ISPs, looking to efficiently produce data, run diligence processes, and really streamline acquisition implementations across multiple platforms and other spaces.
Thanks, John, Michael. I can't say enough. I appreciate you entrusting us, with your businesses and this project, and I enjoyed working with you both.
Thank you.